What is up? We are finally back. 2 weeks for me. Had a little bit of COVID, but we always take Thanksgiving off, and we are not back a moment too soon. Just 2 regular season games left in most fantasy leagues. We are ready to help you punch your ticket to the fantasy playoffs. And of course, the week after Thanksgiving, 6 teams on bye. So you're probably going to need a lot of help this week, and we're here to do it. It's going to be me and Josh, no Joe tonight, which is why you got to see my ugly mug up close and personal to start the show. Let's get into it. What is up? Good evening and welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. No Joe Zolo tonight. He is off doing real work or whatever the hell it is that Joe does. But as always, Josh Hudson. It's just a continuation of the Monday show at this point. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I know, right? We could have just done 2 hours on Monday and then skipped today.
Exactly.
Then I would have been late for work. So
let's be clear. We damn near do 2 hours every Monday anyway. So.
All right, fine. 3 hours, whatever.
Exactly. We just take up the entire Monday morning. How's it going tonight? Are you feeling good about the Philadelphia Eagles this week?
Yeah, we'll see based on my picks, right?
Yeah.
This really, it's a week 13 preview show, but let's be honest. The only game that fucking matters this week, 49ers,
San Fran and Philly.
Philadelphia.
I do want to point out, I did a trigger warning for our Buffalo Bills fans on Monday. Maybe I need to do a trigger warning for our 49ers fans. I don't know if we have many 49ers fans, at least none that have, I don't know. We had the one guy last week who was really mad we didn't like Brock Purdy, but I think that was the
that's fine. He's really not going to like it this week.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to take a second and just throw a couple of things out here. Caesar, welcome, buddy. First comment in. Albert, always good to see you. Joe's burner account right back in there. He's even pointing it out. Joe Ortiz is Joe Zolo. There's even a Z. I'm pretty sure Ortiz is Zolo backwards.
I love the running jokes on this show. It's great.
Exactly. Guys, welcome to the show. We are here to get you guys ready for week 13. Before we dive into it, we have some news and notes to go over. We did our best to scrounge up all the news we could. If there's anything we missed, feel free to drop it in the comments. Kenneth Walker officially ruled as doubtful for the Thursday night game. Should be another Zack Charbonnet start. Jonathan Taylor had surgery on his thumb, likely to miss 2 to 3 weeks. Chris Olave still in concussion protocol. Quentin Johnston now dealing with a rib injury. Demario Douglas also in concussion protocol, which really sucks because the Chargers are such a good matchup for wide receivers. You would really like to have seen this kid get a chance to take them on, but he's probably not going to. Dorian Thompson-Robinson now enters concussion protocol. Entering on a Tuesday is never a good sign, though. The last time this happened, I think it was Brock Purdy, Josh, where he actually ended up playing the game. He went in and got out in time. So it's not a kiss of death, but Joe Flacco,
I've been told that Brock Purdy's built differently. So
obviously, Joe Flacco, of all people, explaining the sorry state of NFL quarterbackdom right now, is taking all first team reps for the Cleveland Browns, a playoff contending team. And finally, what I thought was maybe a troll article the very first time I saw it. Aaron Rodgers, what was it, 79 days or something like that?
79 days.
Tearing his Achilles tendon, enters the 21-day practice window to come off of the IR. And if the Jets are contending for the playoffs, Josh, Aaron Rodgers will play week 16 in the NFL. What the fuck?
Are we sure the Jets are going to be contending? Let's be real here. I mean, honestly, like
fair
the way
enough.
that they've been playing right now, like you can open this window all you want. Doesn't mean what you want to go through it is going to go through it. So
that's a really good point. And there's no reason to think the Jets will be contending at 4-7, especially in their division. Now we obviously have the 7 teams that can make the playoffs now and all that kind of fun stuff. But there's really no reason to think, especially with Tim Boyle.
I was about to say, I mean, we've all seen Tim Boyle play football, right? Like,
yeah.
This is.
I don't know what I call it. Play football.
Reel off 6 straight wins to get into the playoffs, more than likely.
And that means 4 straight or 3 straight without Rodgers, starting with the Miami Dolphins. Or excuse me, no, that's the Atlanta Falcons. It was Dolphins last week. My bad. So starting with the Atlanta
Falcons. Granted, their defense could in theory, probably propel them to a victory because Desmond Ridder likes to throw to the other team.
And it's in New York.
Yeah, like it's Tim fucking Boyle, guys. Like seriously.
I agree. Very, very weird one. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe I saw it. That was the thing that completely threw me off. Folks, as a reminder, we are happy to answer any and all questions you might have for us this week. Obviously, trade deadlines have come and probably gone in most leagues. Still a ton of waiver things, and we're here to help. Elixirs throws in his Week 12 recap. 2 unfortunate losses, bringing his dad and his team to 9th and 10th place, hopefully in a 20-team league. So you're in the middle.
Crossing fingers.
Yeah.
Could you imagine a 20-team standard league?
Oof. Not a lot of scoring in that league.
I'm saying. That would be rough to watch. Oh, each week.
Definitely not. Like in my standard league I'm in right now, it's a 12-team standard. I've gone to the waivers every week. And then to make matters so much worse, Josh, it's a 12-team standard league where we always have to roster 2 quarterbacks, 2 kickers, and 2 defense.
Oh, I hate those types of limitations. Oh my God.
This week, I'm not real. I had Kirk Cousins rip. And so I've been running with Geno Smith and Gardner Minshew. Don't love either one this week. Definitely don't love Geno taking on Dallas tomorrow night. I go and look like maybe there's somebody out there. No, nothing. Desmond Ridder is my best option right now, or Jake Browning. And I'm like, I'm screwed. I started the season, I think 6-1. I'm 7-4 now. So, or 7-5. So it's been a rough downfall with the loss of Kirk Cousins there. And then
it's amazing how we always say fade quarterbacks are not important. You can find the good ones on the waivers.
Until 24 are required to be rostered in a league. Yeah.
That too.
I think next year I might have to consider going with 3. And then before we get into Caesar's question, he started Bijan and Jacobs, was very happy, but then had Kieran Williams on his bench and he would have won the week. I think that's a fair gripe. I don't know.
Let's bring the Raiders play last week.
I was gonna say, let's bring that back up while we're talking about it. The Raiders played, I see the Chiefs. Josh Jacobs broke that long touchdown run.
Yeah. I mean, I could.
First game back, I don't know if I would have played Kieran over either of these.
Honestly, I think I probably would have sat Bijan to get.
So I sat Bijan in all of my leagues last week, Josh. That's exactly what I was going to say. Is I sat Bijan in every league last week. Oh, you're fine. I sat Bijan in every league. So Kieran versus Bijan for my decision making, it would have been rough. So.
Yeah, because I mean, they were 1 and 3 RBs in the week. I don't know. Jacobs is like a top 5 running back on the season, which he has been like the least inspiring top 5 running back performance I think I've ever seen.
It feels like Najee Harris's rookie year a little bit with the low efficiency and
but it's a product of the position as a whole because everybody's getting hurt. It's like when you look at like Rachaad White, Brian Robinson, Josh Jacobs, aside from Christian McCaffrey, those guys are top 10 running backs because they've played every game.
Yeah. Well, it was always funny to me when we all bitched about how disappointing Bijan was. He was a top 12 running back while we were disappointed in him. And it's just like, that is a state of the position.
Yeah, after this past week, I think he's up to like RB9.
Yeah. And so, but we're mad at how he's performed. He's the 10th best running back.
We need consistency, damn it.
Exactly. And that's what we all want. And that's why I shout out to our guy, Bob Lung, with the consistency guide. Maybe we need to start taking that a little bit more seriously instead of going with these boom bust. Josh, you got an opinion on this one? I do. Miami taking on Washington and the Falcons taking on the Jets. Miami is at home. The Falcons are in New York. No, Miami is in Washington. My apologies.
It's Miami for me. The defense has looked better since Jalen Ramsey came back from injury. Obviously, missing Jalen Phillips down with the Achilles injury on Black Friday, that's got to sting. And I'll tell you what, watching Hard Knocks last night, because that was all about that episode, was the Black Friday game and showing the Phillips injury. I feel so bad for that kid. And I love all my former Hurricanes, and Jalen Phillips went to Miami, was a standout Hurricane. Man, that hurts. That really did hurt to watch, but they bring pressure in a lot of different ways, and having the back end against someone like Sam Howell, who isn't afraid to throw it and isn't afraid to throw it and make mistakes, Ramsey can get a couple picks. Javon Holland had a 99-yard touchdown return last week. Yeah. But again, I would not complain about the Falcons defense either against Tim fucking Boyle. So
Falcons are a consolation prize is how I've kind of been putting it. They're not even my stream of the week. Spoiler alert. They are up there. They made the top 5 list. Miami is too rostered to be my stream of the week. I'm going to take ownership on that. They were my stream of the week 2 weeks ago. They've been playable ever since, and they are playable yet again this week. Washington is giving up the second most fantasy points to defense and special teams. You're firing up Miami every time. If you have the roster spot for it, hold the Falcons defense till Saturday so you can cut them and nobody can start them against you, just to keep good defenses off of the waiver wire. Just a little gamesmanship.
Evil.
There, so.
Evil.
Hey, you do what you do to win, especially with the playoffs on the line.
This is true.
Fantasy Football Mad Science Lab says this has got to be the worst year for quarterbacks. I don't know if we've seen a year with more garbage backup playing, and I think the Joe Flacco, Tim Boyle era kind of epitomizes that.
Yeah, I think there was there were 63 quarterbacks that started games last year, which I believe that set NFL record. I don't know if we're approaching that this year, but I feel like the quality of backups is a lot worse than it was last year.
I'm doing a little research.
It is bad. I mean, the Jets now are on their 3rd quarterback. The Browns potentially on their 4th.
Yep. Falcons did a flip-flop, but I mean, it's the same quarterbacks. Technically, Kyler Murray was the 3rd for the Cardinals.
Yep. So. Yeah, because they started Clayton Tune one game.
Raiders, it's the 3rd for the Raiders. Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian
Vikings.
Hoyer.
Yeah, yep. Vikings are on their 3rd.
Yeah. Weird one. And Vikings could be on their 4th.
And they could be on their 4th coming out of the bye. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's talk about benching Josh Dobbs. You could be seeing Nick Mullins.
Yep.
Oh, that's rough.
And again, I go back to why is Justin Jefferson coming back? I'm very, very weird.
He's the spark that will change the tides.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, if you missed our Monday show elixirs, Rashee Rice did good. If you missed my article, Rashee Rice did good, and now you're going to pay a premium if you've let him sit on waivers this entire time. Me and Josh made the joke, not even a joke. We acknowledge that Rashee Rice has never been over 55% rostered at any point this season. That's obviously he's up to, I think, 68% or something like that now. Big jump after last week. And like I said, everybody had to pay up for him. Guys, we see your questions. We're going to get to them. I want to do a little bit of the show sheet before we dive in. We call it upside downside. We are going to make some predictions, probably bold predictions. And based on our records from the previous couple of weeks, predictions that aren't going to come true. Yeah, very, very bold. So we're going to start with my picks. I had 0 for 3 in week 11. We took week 12 off. I wasn't even on the show, so I made a 2-tutty special for 3 different guys. Not one of them scored 2 touchdowns. That brings me to a whopping 8-24-1 on the year. But guess what? That still puts me, I don't see Joe's record here. 10-23. That still puts me in second place, still ahead of Josh, even at 8-24-1. I have Tua Tagovailoa, the QB1 overall, taking on Washington. Brandon Ayuk, a top 5 wide receiver, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. And every week I like to pick a player to score 2 touchdowns. This week, to curse, I'm going to choose Bijan Robinson taking on the New York Jets.
What did that man ever do to you? Seriously.
Exactly. So the Jets have actually given up two touchdown games to running backs already this season. So I like the odds there. But for the sake of the thumbnail, for the sake of my boldness, I'm going to talk about Tua Tagovailoa being my number 1 overall quarterback. No team in the NFL. We just got done beating up on Washington, what they do to fantasy defenses. They also give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. Each of their last 3 opponents has scored at least 28 points. In fact, it was 28, 28, 38 by Dak Prescott. And one of those 28 was Tommy fucking DeVito. And so if those guys can put up those kind of points, I only imagine what Tua is going to be able to do. They've allowed 20 plus fantasy points 10 times this season. Washington has. They've played 11 games. 10 times they've allowed 20 plus fantasy points. The only concern here is going to be the weather in Washington. I am on the East Coast. We are starting to see some snow flurries, rain, wind, the kind of things you don't want to see. I'm hoping just for a 3-hour block on Sunday, things are going to work out real well. Tua has scored a touchdown every single game this season and has 6 multi-touchdown games. I am predicting 2 to Tyreek Hill, 2 to Jaylen Waddle, just to make me feel better about always defending him. 4 touchdowns for Tua Tagovailoa, Josh, and he is going to be the QB1 in fantasy.
You know, that just means Raheem Mostert is going to have a 4-touchdown game to spite you, right?
And what kind of moron talks about how he curses everybody by predicting 2 touchdowns and then just throws 2 touchdown predictions out all over the place? But I'm that kind of moron, folks. And so, yeah.
I mean, I like it. Look, getting rid of Montez Sweat and Chase Young, Washington has no pass rush. None whatsoever. Yeah. And the pass defense has been awful all season, even before they traded those 2. So why not? This is the number 1 scoring offense in the NFL.
And Mostert's been doing
unless Jalen Hurts throws for 3 touchdowns and rushes for another 2, he's probably going to be QB1 this week. So
exactly. Yeah. And it's a little bit tougher defense for Jalen Hurts this time around. Maybe only 3 touchdowns for him. He can let somebody else have the limelight for a second. So those are my picks for the week. Josh, you went 1-2 last week, bringing you to 6-26-1 on the year and 0 for 1.
In fairness, my one win was the thumbnail pick. It was Tony Pollard in week 11.
There you go. That's all that matters.
For SEO's sake, I hit it.
For SEO, you're 1-0.
Missed one by 0.1 point.
Yeah. Yeah, Josh, you actually have a bone to pick. So before we get into your picks, I want you to talk about that because I thought that was a very interesting stat.
I was not mad. I'm going back through. I'm looking at all of our picks from our last show in week 11, and I had Jerome Ford 12 plus fantasy points. He scores 11.9 for me to technically get an L, even though in reality it's a win, right?
Yeah.
I also had Isaiah Pacheco to score under 10 fantasy points.
10.1.
Scores 10.1.
And then this bastard Joe.
God damn it. And then Joe comes in, doesn't even have the balls to fill out his show sheet today because he's just like, fuck you guys. 2 of his picks, Courtland Sutton, top 15 wide receiver. Skates by on the skin of his teeth, finishes wide receiver 14. Adam Thielen, below top 20 wide receiver. Wide receiver 21. Like, seriously?
Joe, maybe
how do I have the bad luck around here? What is this bullshit?
Maybe Joe's quitting. He's just going out on top. That's why he's not doing it anymore.
Jesus.
So rough week for Josh. Let's talk about your picks. So you have Jalen Hurts, top 3, taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And then you went same game. I wonder why. A.J. Brown, top 5, taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And the newly resurrected Najee Harris, 15 plus fantasy points, taking on Arizona. I'm going to ask you to talk about A.J. Brown, Josh, but something tells me you're just going to end up talking about all of the Eagles, including your Jalen Hurts pick. So let's hear about it.
Well, I mean, it really is this simple, right? The Eagles are going to win, guys. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You guys want to lean on we blow out all of our teams. How come you can't beat anybody? Blah, blah. We've won 14 straight games against teams with a winning record. We don't need to blow them out. We just need to beat them. And that's what we're doing. We're beating them. Jalen Hurts, 8 straight wins. Come from behind wins. I mean,
if it works, it works.
Okay. We make better second half adjustments than anybody. Now, what happens if we actually get a lead? God, what the fuck? It's crazy, right? Because
I made the joke on Monday that Jalen Hurts is giving up leads on purpose because he likes to play.
Exactly. He's bored. Bored. He's got to have something to do. Look, the fact of the matter is San Francisco has a great pass rush. I'm not going to deny that. Going out and getting Chase Young makes that pass rush even better. They have 2 interior linemen in Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave, who we know very well from his time in Philadelphia, both generating a ton of pressure. This is a line that does not need the blitz, and they can just sit back and play defense in the secondary. The problem is that secondary, not that great. They give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And this was a fun stat that I had to look up because I wasn't 100% sure it was true. Last year, the best wide receiver on the Eagles was against zone coverage was actually Devonta Smith. He's very good against zone coverage. A.J. Brown, not so much. This year, A.J. Brown has the 8th highest receiving grade in the NFL against zone coverage. Why do I bring that up? Because the San Francisco 49ers defense plays the 9th highest percent of zone coverage in the NFL. And guess what? If you play man coverage, A.J. Brown's the second best wide receiver against man.
It's almost like A.J. Brown is good, but I was going to say San Francisco just gets torched by wide receivers seemingly every week. The fact
of the matter is, A.J. Brown has had 2 fairly down games. 1 for 8, and he did catch a touchdown last week, but it was still a pretty mediocre game by his standards. Yeah. He needs a bounce-back game. For as much trash talk has been going on between these 2 teams for the better part of a year since they got blown out in the NFC Championship game because we didn't have our quarterback. Guess what? Your quarterback started as your 3rd-string quarterback to begin the year. So now he's your quarterback. Okay, cool. You got all your weapons. Cool. Let's see how it goes down because our defensive coordinator knows how to shut down a good offense. Ask Miami what happened to them. Just throwing that out there.
I think there's renewed optimism because of all the points given up to the Bills, but never forget how many the Bills gave up to the Eagles as well.
Well, but even then, like, Josh Allen can run the football.
Yeah.
Like,
that's not Brock Purdy.
That's not Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's not going to run for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's not going to happen. He has to beat you with his arm. And I have stats to back that up a little bit later.
Oh, more to come. Let's knock out some questions. Joe gave us no picks, as Josh pointed out. He went 2 for 1 on the week. He is 10-23 on the year, putting him first in this contest. But after this week, he'll be last because he will be down picks. Well, I mean, I guess, I don't know, the way we've been picking Josh, he may not change his standings whatsoever. Let's get to some questions. We got our guy Blurpy, full PPR, 2 flex spots. Question 1 is Taysom Hill versus Jake Ferguson. Blurpy is projected to lose his matchup by 14, so he is considering the ceiling play with Taysom Hill. Blurpy, I'm going to agree with you here. I am not big on Jake Ferguson this week. That's actually going to come up a little bit later in the show. Seattle, for whatever reason, while they don't do a great job against wide receivers and certainly don't do a great job against running backs, they've done pretty well at slowing down some really big name tight ends. I am almost willing to guarantee Ferguson does not score a touchdown, and he's never scored more than 10 fantasy points except one time this season on volume alone. It's always been touchdowns that have gotten him there. I think Taysom Hill is the higher ceiling play, but Josh, I know you are not a big Taysom Hill guy.
No, I'm really not. I mean, Juwan Johnson's back. He's healthy. He's playing. Taysom Hill, it's a hope and a prayer, right? So again, like, I guess if you're chasing the upside, sure, because he's probably the only player in the NFL that has a realistic shot each and every week to score a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown.
Yeah.
So when you talk about upside and chasing ceiling, yeah, it's Taysom Hill. But the likelihood of that happening is like that. And if you're fighting for a playoff spot, I don't know that you really want to play with those odds. I would much rather take the safer option with Jake Ferguson. But to your point, Ryan, yeah, he needs to score a touchdown. So yeah, if you don't think he's going to score a touchdown, I guess chase the upside. But I personally would still rather have the 4 for 24 that I get from Ferguson versus 2 carries for 10 yards and no receptions.
Let me run this by you, Josh, because I like Juwan Johnson this week for the reason I'm about to throw at you. The Saints are almost certainly without Rashid Shaheed and maybe without Chris Olave. Michael Thomas already on the IR. They're going to have nobody at wide receiver. Does that increase or decrease Taysom Hill's value? Because they could come out and run the wishbone because of the fact that they have no wide receivers this week.
So if you're banking on all those guys missing time to, again, chase that upside with Taysom Hill, you're likely not going to know that information until Saturday.
That's fair.
Ferguson plays Thursday night.
Yeah.
So now what's your pivot if you're banking on those what ifs? You know what I mean? That's why I'm saying I would just much rather take the safe play with Ferguson, who I know is at least still going to see targets. May not be like 10 or 15 targets because there's only one tight end that can truly command those types of numbers. Yeah. But 6 to 8, maybe. Like, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
And this could help with the upside dilemma. We also have to pick 4, but I'm going to actually just say it's bench 1 of these guys. Travis Etienne, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, Rachaad White, and Zack Moss. We have to bench 1. We have to start 4 of these guys. Jacksonville, I'm blanking on who Jacksonville is playing. Yeah, I don't have my schedule up like I normally do. sure someone's going to get it to us.
Yeah, right. Jaguars play the Bengals on Monday night.
Yeah, that's right. Jaguars are the Monday night game. Tennessee is taking on, man, I am blanking on everybody.
I mean, you're not sitting Etienne. I know he's had a couple down weeks, but he's still the guy in that offense. You're starting him.
Yep.
Tony Pollard,
you're not benching Pollard.
Seattle.
Yep.
That's a gimme matchup. They're a cakewalk for running backs. Rachaad White, the Bucs play the
Carolina.
Panthers.
Can't bench him.
You're not sitting him.
This comes down to Derrick Henry and Zack Moss, who are playing each other.
Correct. I mean, Tennessee has the tougher run defense, so I'm probably starting Derrick Henry over Zack Moss.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Tennessee has actually done a great job against running backs this week. I was going to pick on Jonathan Taylor if he was playing, but he's not playing now, and it's just no fun picking on Zack Moss. So I would start your first four, and I would go Taysom Hill. And Josh says, if you just want the safe, fair points, go with Jake Ferguson. Benguino. I think I said that right. Or Benguino 2, whatever. Pick 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, 10-team PPR. Running backs, we have to choose 2. Tony Pollard, Zach Charbonnet, Breece Hall, Chuba Hubbard, Travis Etienne.
Etienne
so 2
and
of those guys.
For me.
Yeah, I would say it's Etienne and Pollard. Still not big sold on Chuba, and I'm really interested to see what Carolina does with their offense now with a whole new offensive staff in there. Atlanta's been actually surprisingly good against running backs. Atlanta's defense has been surprisingly good. And Dallas, I think, is going to shut Charbonnet down. I don't know that these guys are even going to be an option for the flex spot. He has to choose between Jamar Chase, Cortland Sutton, DeAndre Hopkins, Josh Downs, Chris Olave, who this decision may be made for you there, and Amari Cooper. And I want to start with Josh. If Joe Flacco is the quarterback, is Amari Cooper a consideration?
I mean, he can air it out a lot better than DTR. But, I mean, let's be honest. He's a 36-year-old quarterback who wasn't on a roster before last week.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's a reason he wasn't on a roster until week 11. And the last couple of years that we've seen Joe Flacco in action really has not looked great. So I'm not loving Amari Cooper. For me, I'm sticking with Chase. I know Browning is Browning. He's a backup. He's not great, but he's going to be the target funnel in that offense. So give me him, give me Sutton, and Josh Downs, honestly. D-Hop, God, like it's hard to sit him because it's D-Hop, but
yeah, I think you made the right choice, especially with this.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, Downs is they're throwing him the football. He's getting it. D-Hop, there's just so much inconsistency with Will Levis right now that he's just so hard to trust. And it's going to suck because the time that you bench D-Hop is the time that he goes for 21 points. Like,
or touchdowns.
Sucks, but it's what it is.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Josh Downs, 13 targets last week. Didn't do a whole lot with him last week, but still being heavily involved in the game. And then he ends it. Oh, wait, we have to pick a flex too, Josh. So is D-Hop the flex? I think he has to be, right, over Cooper?
No. I picked all 3. I
apologize. We said Sutton.
Downs. Yeah.
I forgot about Sutton. Yep. Nope. So, yeah, I agree completely. And then Kyler or T-Law? Taking a look.
The Cardinals got Steelers.
Yeah, I'm bringing up my rankings right now.
I don't hate Kyler this week. I worry because all of his weapons right now are banged up. Trey McBride missed practice to Wednesday. Hollywood Brown missed practice. Michael Wilson's been out with a shoulder injury.
He has Greg Dortch.
So that's sure. I would probably play it safe with T-Law this week. But even then, like I don't hate the matchup. T-Law has been great of late, so
all right,
I'm fine sticking with Trevor Lawrence.
I'm gonna work backwards on a couple of questions ago that we're gonna need to discuss here. I agree, it's T-Law here, but we need to go back and talk about the previous question because Moss beat Tennessee for 33 points earlier this season, and Jamie Eisenberg has him as his number 2 running back this week. Moss isn't in my top 20. I don't think. And obviously, I mean, Eisenberg's a bigger name than I am, but I don't think top 2 is any yet. Moss is my RB21. I understand he popped off earlier, but you don't get credit for past points. But that is extremely interesting considering Tennessee has been pretty good against running backs so far this season. So Moss got
I'm actually kind of curious how they've played the last 4 or 5 weeks against running backs. Tennessee they're 18th. They're middle of the road against running backs since week 8. I mean, it's kind of right there. And Indy's worse against running backs. So
Yeah.
I mean, the risk, of course, with Derrick Henry, he's not looked like Derrick Henry so far this year. So I just, if you don't want to trust Derrick Henry, go with Zach Moss. Like, I don't think there's like a wrong answer, so to speak. But I'm like, again, like I just think Indy's a better matchup.
Yeah.
And I think with a young quarterback, you have to lean on the running game. Like, how healthy is Tajay Spears right now? Homeboy got blown up. Yep. Was it last week, 2 weeks ago? I feel like
2 weeks ago and did next to nothing last week.
Yeah. So. Like, I don't even know that he's fully healthy, and that's just going to mean more Derrick Henry. And you need to lean on Derrick Henry when you have a young Will Levis. So,
yep. I agree. All right, guys. Moving on. Elixirs, it's his bye-week hell. He needs to drop 2 people to get Kieran Williams off of IR, not waivers. He clarifies that later. To get Kieran Williams off of his IR. And then he needs to pick up someone to replace Dalton Kincaid. Oh, I thought you were giving us – do I have who to drop? Oh, here we go.
They're there.
Yep, I was going to say. Missed it for a second there. So, Purdy, Fields on bye. Puka Nacua, Chris Olave, Rashee Rice, DJ Moore on bye. JSN, Christian Watson, Bijan and Brian Robinson, Josh Jacobs on bye, Kieran Williams, who needs to move up. Dalton Kincaid. So he has to cut 2 of these guys. I think we can pretty easily say Christian Watson. I don't care about the bump game that he had last week. I am struggling, Josh, to tell him to cut anybody else. I think you're going to say JSN, and I don't think I have a problem.
JSN was the first name that came out on that one. Like, I know he's had a few decent games here and there, but it hasn't been enough for me to be like, all right, I need this guy on my team 100% because he's starting, right? Like, yeah. He's still a bench guy. Like, you're starting Puka over him. You're starting a healthy Olave. You're starting a healthy DJ Moore. Rashee Rice,
do you have to start
the starter there?
I have to ask though, Elixirs, do you have to start 3 wide receivers? Because if you do, you're in trouble, plain and simple. You may have to go empty spot this week. Because if Olave is out, you'd have to cut Rashee Rice. No, you can't.
Based on this lineup, I was going to say, based on this lineup, this is probably going to be really controversial.
Take the L.
Fields. No, I would drop Fields. Purdy's already had his bye.
And this is the 9th and 10th place team, I imagine. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you just need to get a win. And with Fields on a bye, he's not helping you get a win. I mean, you're likely going to need to keep one of JSN and Christian Watson just in case Olave does not play. Because I'm going to go under the impression that, okay, he chimes in a little here now. He's got to start 3 wide receivers.
It's the same settings as my standard league on CBS.
Yeah. Like you're not dropping any of those running backs right now. But so like to me, you're dropping your backup quarterback because again, you don't need to play him. And even when he has played so far, like the last couple of weeks, he really hasn't been anything fantastic.
I was going to say, so it's easier for you to drop Fields than just flat out dropping Kincaid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kincaid's been the top 7 tight end the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that you're going to go and it's just tight end is so thin right now. And I know you like playing the streaming game at tight end, but that's exactly what it is. It is
unless you have the elite guy.
Yep, unless you have the elite guys. And you know what? For the past month, Kincaid has been that. So why give that up? Like, Fields hasn't been, the elite world beater that so many wanted him to be in fantasy this year. Purdy's been consistent. Not that I think he's going to do great this week, but
if you didn't,
he's going to put up more points than Justin Fields this week. So
yeah, certainly. And if you didn't need to win this week, this is a spot where I would maybe take a 0 at tight end, but you need the win, plain and simple. You're not taking any zeros. I'm going to agree with Josh here because you can't cut these wide receivers. Where we're going to disagree is I would say cut Christian Watson. He's going to say cut JSN. Choose between those 2, whichever one you like the least, and then you're going to have to cut Justin Fields just because of the dilemma you're in. Geek Mill, hey guys, how we feeling about Derrick Henry right now? 2 touchdowns last week. Is he locked in for the fantasy playoffs? I believe we are 2 different minds here. I have been tooting the Derrick Henry horn for a while now. He has a very, very favorable playoff schedule, and I think he is going to get more involved as the season goes. I think it was a rough start. We're not going to see, 4.4, 4.6 yards per carry very much out of Derrick Henry, but I think the volume is going to be there. I think the touchdowns are going to be there. I do believe he is at least an RB2 for the rest of the fantasy season. Josh.
Yeah, I think that's about fair. I mean, the volume itself is going to keep him kind of in that category. Who do the Titans have the rest of the season? I feel like we played this out earlier in one of our shows.
I don't have that quickly accessible.
I'm pulling it up right now because I know they've got they have the Texans twice. So they've got Indy this week. They have they're at Miami on Monday night versus the Texans versus Seattle. Great matchup. At Houston again for the championship week in the playoffs. So and he's done historically well against Houston.
Yep. He does great against Houston.
Defense, yeah.
And everybody else there gives up a ton of points.
Better. They've been better of late. Actually, yeah, since week 8, they allow the second fewest fantasy points to running backs. That's not going to favor Derrick Henry by any means, but
not at all.
There's definitely, I mean, there's some intrigue this week against Indy, definitely against Seattle on Christmas Eve. Dolphins can be hit or miss, but I don't know if I'm locked in on the fantasy playoffs, but
I don't know if I
think you're probably looking at a RB2 flex play with Derrick Henry.
I wouldn't call him a flex, but I certainly wouldn't use the word noodles around Derrick Henry ever. Joe, cut the shit, man. Speaking of Joe, he needs to choose between Jaylen Warren, Diontae Swift, Raheem Mostert, Travis Etienne. He's starting to. For me, it's Mostert and Etienne. Warren and Swift. Swift, you wanted to see more out of last week against Buffalo. San Francisco is going to probably be a tougher matchup. For me, you're hoping for good things out of Warren, but Najee Harris could just as easily step in there. Raheem Mostert is a lock for a touchdown this week. Travis Etienne is a guy who's getting the volume. You obviously want to get a full, healthy, clean bill of health for Travis Etienne, and then if not, you pivot to Warren or Swift in that situation. But for me, Mostert's a must start, and I'm going Travis Etienne, Josh.
Yeah, it's definitely Mostert. I can see the intrigue when it comes to Jaylen Warren, just because that matchup is chef's kiss. Like, you want running back starting against the Cardinals, definitely. Yep. And he had the upside play last week, even on a limited number of snaps with this new look offense. So depending on how Kenny Pickett does against the Cardinals, which I know you're hopeful, Ryan, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah.
This very well could just be the running back show. It could be a big Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren day,
100%.
and everybody else just sits out, because you can beat Arizona in so many different ways.
Easily.
So, I mean, I get the intrigue when it comes to Warren, but I'm still going to, Mostert to me is the definite. I don't see any reason to sit Etienne. Again, yes, he's struggled a little bit the last few games. It's just the volume is there. You're waiting, because the moment that you sit him, there's that 2 touchdown game.
Yep.
And he does enough in both on the ground and through the air that you just cannot justify sitting him to chase upside points with Jaylen Warren.
And just the good part about this is if he is not looking 100% healthy, you have a wonderful pivot option. So I would start your studs and pivot if necessary. Elixirs, Dad's bench. Dad's team, he has to bench one of these guys. Tony Pollard, Rachaad White.
Rachaad White.
Jahmyr Gibbs. So let's start with that. He has to bench one of those running backs.
My instinct, my gut says Jahmyr Gibbs, and I don't even like that.
I don't know that we have to talk about it much, Josh. Pollard has Seattle. Rachaad White has Carolina. Jahmyr Gibbs is the bench.
Yeah, those are the 2 easiest guys to play this week.
Yeah.
Those are set it and forget it guys based on matchup and just what they've done so far this season. I hate saying bench Jahmyr Gibbs, but yeah, between Tony Pollard, Rachaad White, and Jahmyr Gibbs, I think you're sitting Jahmyr Gibbs this week.
Yeah, 100%. And then he has to bench one out of Evan Ingram and Kyle Pitts. You can't start Kyle Pitts. What are we doing?
No, why is that even a question?
Yeah,
Kyle Pitts actually belongs on your waiver wire, dude.
If you said Jonnu Smith or Kyle Pitts, I'd say to start Jonnu Smith. You're definitely starting Evan Ingram against the Bengals, who give up the 4th or 5th most points to fantasy tight ends. So start Ingram, bench Gibbs, which is just painful to say. Bench Jahmyr Gibbs.
Man, that hurts.
Killer Quicks with Walker out, doubtful, or unless it got announced out. I don't think so, though.
Well, he's doubtful, Ryan. We know that nobody plays except Max Crosby because, again, built different.
The first player to do it this season. Zach Charbonnet Thursday night, or Brian Robinson. Oh, Zach Charbonnet, Brian Robinson against the Dolphins, or Devon Achane against Brian Robinson's Washington Commanders. Who we starting, Josh?
I'm definitely sitting Charbonnet.
Yep. I have no hope in Charbonnet whatsoever. The Dolphins do give up a surprising number of points, if I remember correctly, to running backs. Bringing that up right now. To me, if Achane
Can you really trust Achane or Achane? Like, I'm starting him in some leagues, but I'm desperate for points, and I'm going to chase the upside because we know that Achane has that in spades. But
yeah, I was
happens
wrong. The Dolphins do not
third
give up
carry. Yeah, on the third carry, tweaks the knee again, and Mike McDaniel's just like, dude, we need you for the playoffs, man. Like, slow your roll a little bit. So.
Yeah, I'd probably go Brian Robinson in the volume here. Just hope for 60 yards and stumbles into the end zone, I think is your best bet here. And he's been heavily involved in the passing game, more so than you would have expected.
They've used him quite a bit, yeah. I mean, it's going to suck because, you're banking on that touchdown, even with the increase of receiving usage that he's had this year. But for him to have like a truly impactful fantasy day against the Dolphins run defense, you need that touchdown.
I don't know if this is a second team for Quicks because some of the players line up, but I'm guessing it's just a thing where he has a lot of the same players. I'm going to guess because we're talking flex, this is Diontae Johnson, not D'Ernest Johnson. I know he's been a hot waiver pickup, but let's go Diontae Johnson, Drake London, Zach Charbonnet, Brian Robinson in the Superflex, or does he actually put a quarterback in his Superflex and throw Jake Browning in there? So which one of these guys would you start in your Superflex spot, Josh?
Definitely not Drake London. Don't love him against Sauce this week. Definitely not Charbonnet. For me, this really boils down to Diontae versus Brian Robinson. I'm not touching Jake Browning in a super flex with a 10-foot pole. We talked about Brian Robinson. I love the matchup for Diontae Johnson. I'm definitely worried because of the whole antics and bullshit from last week. But if there's a get-right game,
100%.
It's this week against Arizona. Like,
literally the words out of my stream of the week mouth. It's Diontae Johnson because I think he's going to make up for what happened last week. I'm going to go Diontae Johnson in this situation. I'm still not ready to start Jake Browning, even against a kind of beatable matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, guys, keep dropping those questions in there. We're going to knock out the downsides real quick. So last week, we're going to start with you this time. Joshua, you went 1-2 in week 11. Again, we were off in week 12, bringing you to 13, 19, and 1 on the year. You have Brock Purdy outside the top 12. What do you know? Deebo Samuel under 13 fantasy points as you continue to fuck with the San Francisco 49ers fans. And then Nico Collins outside of the top 24. And you're going to give us a bonus pick, but I'm going to let you bring your bonus pick in as you're giving the San Francisco 49ers a hard time. So go for it, buddy.
Yeah. So Brock Purdy, look, this is a home run matchup for Brock Purdy. And in all honesty, every player on this San Francisco 49ers offense, right? Eagles defense is like the worst against quarterbacks or the worst against wide receivers. They can be had against receiving running backs. Zach Cunningham being out with a hamstring, Nakobe Dean on IR. Christian McCaffrey's probably going to be a top 2 running back this week.
I feel like I'm watching 8 Mile and you're pulling an Eminem, just using everything that tell these people something they don't know about me.
But here's the thing. When you look at Brock Purdy's play style, tell me how it's very different than Tua Tagovailoa. Pretty similar, right? Doesn't use his legs a lot, relies pretty heavily on timing routes and his weapons to kind of bail him out when needed, right? I talked about the highest scoring offense in the NFL with Miami Dolphins. Eagles defense held them to 10 points.
Yeah, it's a rough week.
Tua that week had 12.34 fantasy points. Oof. If there's one thing that Sean Desai knows how to do, he shows up in games like this when it matters. Brock Purdy, under pressure, has the 18th highest passing grade against pressure. Okay. The San Francisco 49ers offensive line has the 5th lowest pass block grade, according to Pro Football Focus. The Eagles rush duo of Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat are tied for the 2nd most combined pressures amongst any duo on defense. Wow. Sweat has 54 pressures and 7 sacks, I believe. And then Reddick has 10 sacks and 50 pressures. Okay. Not saying this to try to discount the other pass rushing duo on the other side, because both of them are really good too. Nick Bosa has more combined pressures than any of them. He has 66 himself. Chase Young has 48. Didn't get all of those with San Francisco. And as I mentioned, I gave props to Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave. They bring the pressure too. You know what the Eagles' pass block grade is? Second highest in the NFL. Okay. That's the difference. We can handle pressure. San Francisco cannot. Brock Purdy, when under pressure, is not a great quarterback. When coming from behind, he's an even worse quarterback. So what happens if Philly actually does jump out to a lead? Because we know they can come from behind. But if they don't jump out to a lead, San Francisco, this is going to be a very bad day for them.
Might not be the day that 49ers fans are hoping for.
Okay. This is why I don't like Debo this week, because he's been the one that's talked the most talk. He doesn't know how to shut up.
Him and A.J. Brown are going at it right now.
Exactly. And it's fantastic. I love it. The difference is A.J. Brown knows how to back it up. Debo needs everybody else to do their thing for him to do his thing. And we've talked about this, because he either gets 20 plus fantasy points or he gets under 13. One or the other. So what do you think is truly going to happen for as much trash as he's talked about James Bradbury, who had an interception last week, actually looked pretty decent against Buffalo? Our secondaries slowly coming together with the addition of Kevin Byard. Again, didn't look great last week. Josh Allen is a very different cat. Brock Purdy's not Josh Allen.
Certainly not.
Just saying, again, it looks like a fantastic matchup on paper. Games are not won on paper. That's all I'm going to say. And then, of course, my bonus pick. I do want to.
You almost organically put it into your thing, and I thought you were going to go.
I almost did. I was going
to be
my bonus pick here, because we saw last week Lane Johnson being out. That first drive scared the bejesus out of me. I thought Jack Driscoll was going to get annihilated and Jalen Hurts was going to be running for his life. But the Eagles are 11-22 in games where Lane Johnson does not start. Lane Johnson missed last week because of that hamstring injury, and it took everything we had to win that game. Buffalo doesn't have the same type of pass rush that San Francisco does.
No.
So if Lane Johnson plays, Chase Young, Nick Bosa, they will combine for less than 1 sack. That's my prediction. Chase Young had 1 sack against Philly in his 2 matchups with Washington. He got Jordan Mailata in the first game that they played. Mailata's allowed 3 sacks all year. Lane Johnson's allowed 2, which are the first sacks he's even allowed since 2020, mind you.
Wow.
Nick Bosa was shut out in the NFC Championship game by Lane Johnson.
There you go.
They made the move at the deadline because they knew that they had to get pressure on Jalen Hurts. This is the game that it's going to come
works
to
or
fruition.
it doesn't. Exactly.
It ain't going to come to fruition. Their pressure is going to come from the middle. It's going to come from Eric Armstead, and it's going to come from Javon Hargrave. That's where it's going to come from, because our guards, that's the weakest link of our offensive line.
Our buddy Joe Ortiz hoping for a big Brandon Ayuk
dude,
game.
Ayuk is going to go ham this week.
Yeah, love Brandon Ayuk. I predicted a top 5 week. Kittle right now is my tight end too, so I think this might be a bit of a get right game for him as well.
I think both of them are going to do great. It'll be Debo that struggles,
and I think we could even see Christian McCaffrey within reason taking a step back just because the Eagles are so good against running backs. He's still going to get his. He's Christian fucking McCaffrey. For my downside, guys, I went 3-0 in week 11, predicting 0 touchdowns. So that was fun. At least I can do something right. That brings me to 14-19.
I'm surprised you didn't do it again this week. I'm just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there, dude.
Nah, when I'm here to defend it, last week was fun, and it's just easier for you guys to talk about. Plus, I know Joe hates that I played this game to begin with. I will point out, let me go to my show sheet real quick. I am 6-5 on the no touchdown special just from a weekly basis, 8-5 if you count that I picked 3 of them previously. So I'm doing pretty good on these picking people not to score a touchdown. This week I got Garrett Wilson not making the top 30 against the Atlanta Falcons. Jake Ferguson, as previously mentioned, not hitting 10 fantasy points against the Seattle Seahawks. And for my no touchdown special and what I'm going to talk about, give me Alvin Kamara taking on the Detroit Lions. And with this one, I was about to pick on Kamara where he could finish in the fantasy realm. But the problem is he catches too many passes and he might be the only wide receiver they have. However, Detroit has done a very good job against running backs. They've given up the third fewest points to running backs. Only 4 backs have crossed 15 fantasy points to them, and not one running back this season has scored a receiving touchdown against the Detroit Lions. There's obviously going to be volume heading Kamara's way, but with the Saints being so banged up, I'm also worried that the Lions could just key on him completely and decide to take him out of the game and let somebody like Taysom Hill or Juwan Johnson beat them up. Kamara's rushing numbers have dipped as the season has progressed, but he started off so hot. That makes a lot of sense. He's going to need to get this job done in the passing game, Josh. And while I think there could be, 5 for 50 like we saw from him last week, an easy 10 to 12 fantasy points just on yardage, I don't think there's going to be enough to give him a touchdown through the air, and I don't think Detroit's going to surrender one to him on the ground with the lack of receiving weapons for the New Orleans Saints this week.
Dig it.
So, yeah, that is that, and we only have one user question before we get into my stream of the week. 11-1. It's a kicker question, Josh. Do we drop Justin Tucker, who is on bye, to grab Will Lutz? Is it Blake Groupie? Yeah, Matt Gay. Or just take the O at kicker. I'm going to tell you right now, do not take the O at kicker, the 0. Justin Tucker, having not missed a game yet this season, is only the kicker 8. This is not the dilemma you're making it out to be. His name is doing weird things to you. I know Joe chimed in and said, go ahead and grab Lutz. I don't think that's a terrible pickup. For me, it would be Matt Gay. I like the Colts taking on Tennessee this week. However, that is a monitor the weather game because I think Tennessee is projected to see a little weather on Sunday. Josh, I know it's kickers and you could not care less. Do you have anything you want to add to that one?
Our good friend Lindellians has Matt Gay at 7 and Will Lutz at 9. So
there you go. Where she got Groupie? I know he has a question on his head right now.
Let's see. She has Groupie at 10.
There you go. So
I mean, she has them all top 10. I mean,
if you don't follow Linda,
I would be fine going with the dome kicker. I know that's what Zolo would say. So
yep, exactly. If you don't follow Linda at Lindellians, she has been the kicker expert on Twitter for 4 or 5 years now, probably her entire life. And she actually does kicker rankers for Matthew Berry's newsletter. So you want to be very in tune with what Linda is saying when it comes to the kickers. And now it's time for me to do something I haven't done in 3 weeks. It is time for the streams of the week. Here we go. Week 13 streams of the week, all available in about 50% of ESPN leagues. At quarterback, give me Kenny Pickett taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Let's start with the easiest fact. The Cardinals just gave up 4 touchdowns to Matthew Stafford. They give up 22 fantasy points per week, 6th most in the league. And this new look Steelers offense is looking pretty crisp. Pickett has best game of the season last week, though he could have really benefited from that Diontae Johnson touchdown. And I think Johnson and Pickett make up for that this week. I'll take Juwan Johnson at tight end. As I mentioned, the Saints are a little banged up, and Johnson could end up being the number 1 receiving target going on against the Detroit Lions. He's averaging 4 targets per game since coming back from injury, 7 targets last week, and the Lions are giving up about 12 points per game to fantasy tight ends. Tucker Kraft just scored a touchdown on them last week, and Johnson might be the only Saint to score a touchdown this week. That's what I'm banking on. And for defense, I'm going to go Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home against the Carolina Panthers. The new look Carolina offense is not going to matter unless it is a new offensive line. They are surrendering 4 sacks per game and allowing the 5th most points to fantasy defenses. While Tampa Bay has been pretty mediocre, they do have multiple sacks in each of their last 5 games, and they should be able to get after Bryce Young in this one. Those are the Week 13 streams of the week. Full article available tomorrow. Josh, we did it. Short show this week, buddy.
Even got done before the hour mark.
Exactly. That's the first time my stream of the week is going to be before the hour. I'll have to remind myself. It helps that we didn't have any of Joe's picks to go through and give a hard time to at all. So.
Or him to take up half the time just talking to himself.
Yeah, I love that you're the timestamp bitch. Joe loves the sound of his own voice, and I go 3-0 on telling you
just
won't
the glorious
score touchdowns.
Beard.
I'd say, and I'm nothing but a beard. I'm nothing but a beard who predicts no touchdown weeks and curses people by predicting 2 touchdown weeks. Josh, I've been talking the whole show. Get us out of here.
You can follow Club Fantasy across the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL, clubfantasyffl.com. Always remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you next Wednesday, hopefully with Joe, but you'll see these 2 glorious faces on Saturday morning for Starts at Different Day, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on the Club Fantasy FFL YouTube page.
Oh, have a good night.